Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host, Flavia Barris, as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media, including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur. Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of talking to Shawn DiMartile. Shawn is an apartment investor, co-host of the Multifamily Takeoff Podcast, co-founder of Pacific 3 Capital, and co-host of the Beers and Deals REI networking event in San Diego, California. That's local to me, so I've got to go check that out. He got started in real estate investing when he purchased a 32-unit apartment in Greenwood, Indiana, so all the way across the country from where he is now. Today, he and his partners own 183 apartment units and are in the process of expanding to 482 units this year. His business model is to purchase cash-flowing but underperforming apartment communities in growing markets. Over a 3 to 5 year period, he adds value to the tenant class by improving their living condition and experience of the property, as well as increasing operational efficiencies to improve that bottom line. While under his management, investors receive cash flow distributions and a lump sum payout at the point of sale. For his day job, Shawn works as an air traffic controller. Very exciting. I want to ask you a lot about that. For fun, he enjoys backpacking in the wilderness for days at a time in our beautiful national parks. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited too. And I must say, I feel that the podcast lately has been a little bit real estate heavy. And I wonder if for two reasons, maybe because real estate is so conducive to a lifestyle business and there's just so many ways that you can incorporate real estate into what you do, yet still stay sane and find passive income in many different ways, and also just have your schedule really bend to kind of your own calendar and what you need it to look like. So that could be one reason. The other one is because I'm so heavily in real estate myself. So I wonder if subconsciously I'm just kind of attracting that kind of guest and seeking out that kind of guest, which if that's the case, I need to work on it. So Shawn, maybe offline after this podcast, we can chat and see if you know anybody who is again, we like to interview people that can make a part-time work turn into a full-time income. So if you know people in your network, let's chat because I'm always looking for new guests. And if any listener out there fits that criteria and you could cut back to part-time and still make a full-time income because of the way you've structured what you do, reach out through the website, lifestylesolopreneur.com, and nominate yourself as a guest. I'd love to connect with you and see if you'd be a good fit. So Shawn, tell us a little bit about your journey, because it says here, Greenwood, Indiana. That's very different from San Diego, across the country. So I'm curious how that worked.
Great question. So the reason why I made the decision to invest all the way on the other side of the country is really based off of just a couple key principles. Number one, as you said in the beginning of the show, we both live here in San Diego, California. Out here in Southern California, finding cash flowing assets is way more difficult than other markets around the country. The barriers to entry are also much tougher in Southern California because of the obvious reason of properties just costing much more money. And when the properties cost much more to purchase, it's much more difficult to find properties that are going to give you a great return on your investment. It is true that properties appreciate really well out here. But like you were talking about at the beginning of the show, my search is to create a portfolio of multifamily real estate properties that's going to provide enough cash flow to me to live off of and give me that lifestyle that I'm seeking. So those Midwestern and Southeastern markets are still really great growth markets, but they provide the cash flow that we're seeking and just much better returns on our investment. So we decided to set our focus on a couple key markets that we identified and start building our portfolio way over there.
And so these journeys, a lot of times we see the end result and we sort of see where someone has gotten, and we may know where they started. But for a lot of people, it's kind of a head scratcher. What are those steps in between? If somebody says to themselves, hey, I'd love to be like Shawn. I want to be in multifamily and apartment buildings. I mean, someone's got to own those buildings. Why not me? What would you recommend to someone who is not involved really in real estate at all? Maybe they just own their own home that they live in, but they're not real estate investors per se. What should they do first to get some education or background or experience? Like, where would they go if you were mentoring them?
That's such a good question. And I think you have to start with self-education, because in today's world, there's so much free content out there to really give you your base level knowledge that you need to start out in any business, in my opinion. And real estate is no exception. There's books that you could purchase, tons and tons of podcasts like this one that you can listen to, focusing exclusively on real estate, my past podcast even being one of them. And you can learn little bits and pieces from each and every podcast from other people who are where you want to be. The second thing that I would really recommend is to find a mentor. And I cannot emphasize that enough, especially in the real estate business, because there's so many people that are where you want to be. And I'm a firm believer in finding those people and then following in their footsteps and learning from the mistakes, specifically learning from the mistakes they made, so you don't have to make those same ones. Because in real estate in particular, it could be complicated, but everybody's already figured all of this stuff out. You're not going to really get into real estate and reinvent the wheel here. So if you want to create this, whether it's multifamily, apartment investing like I'm doing, two things are educate yourself like crazy. I spent years reading books, like stacks and stacks of books and blogs, watching other people do it. And then I found a really great mentor who can help me take it to the next level. I think those are the two most important things somebody can do.
And then as far as mentorship, should people get out there and network and start local with, there's so many meetups, and right now there's not as many in-person meetups currently, but that is something that you can find online now even. So, which is kind of neat, because then it doesn't really have to be local to you. If there's a Zoom call that's just in that niche area. I've had guests on this podcast that specialize in note investing, where they kind of purchase underperforming loans. And that's what they do. I've had other people that are, into buy and hold for single family homes in Midwestern markets. There's so many interesting ways that you can niche down and sort of get involved and find the one thing that you want to do, not just in real estate, but just in business. And I agree with you. You just got to get out there and make connections and find someone who's done that one path that you're really looking at, because they may even tell you not to go down that path. And that's good information too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up a really good point. Like, what do you do? Okay, sounds great, Shawn. Well, how am I supposed to find a really great mentor? Well, you already gave some great tips. And I think that there's two things. First, you do need to put yourself out there. Get yourself and your face in front of as many other professionals in whatever industry you're picking is, whether that be meetups like you mentioned, or whatever else you can think of. There's even conferences, things like that. But when finding a mentor, not just any mentor is going to do. And you also don't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, would you be my mentor, right? So you have to take some time, because there's also guru programs out there that will charge you an arm and a leg and then just put you through some classes with 100 other people. And you're kind of limited on what you're going to learn with programs like that. It was a months-long search for me when I was really hunting for a mentor. And it came down to finding somebody that not only was where I wanted to be, but had the kind of work ethic and style that I wanted to be in real estate. And I just kind of had meshed well with that person. I think you need to mesh well with your mentor, like just on a personal level too. And then when it comes to finding a mentor, I really think that to get that person to be excited about mentoring you, you still need to provide them value. It's an exchange of value at the end of the day. They're going to provide you with an enormous amount of value by showing you how to do their business, but provide them with value in return in any way possible, whether that be saying, hey, look, I know you're really busy, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, but I've been underwriting properties and practicing like crazy. If I find a property that I think is a really good deal and I bring it to you, would you maybe help me with some of the next steps and partner on me with it so I can learn from you? Something like that, to where it's not just you going up to somebody that's extremely busy because they're a successful entrepreneur and just saying, hey, can you take time out of your day, which is going to cost you time and money, and teach me something? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Such great advice. Another thing that I'm curious about to get your take on is, so when you first purchased a 32 unit apartment building in Indiana, you had certain knowledge, experience, yet mentorship. What is something that you know now going into your 500th unit? You're almost there at the 500 mark that you didn't know at the 32 unit level, that is something you now know that you kind of wish you had known at the 32 unit level?
Yeah, well, there's probably a couple things. The first thing that comes to mind, though, is, and this is going to be really specific to my business, but raising even or bringing even more capital than I needed to the table, because we went in just a little bit undercapitalized and then had to go and borrow more money after we closed on that 32 unit in order to complete our business plan. And that's just a really important lesson that I think a lot of business people learn. But there's a lot of little lessons about what I would look for in my next property going into that I had learned from my last one, that 32 unit. But if I could go back and do it all again, I would have done it sooner. That's the second thing that came to mind, because like I just talked about, all of those years of studying, practicing underwriting properties, talking to brokers, all of that stuff, there is an inflection point where you can only learn so much without doing. And I think I waited too long to jump in. And had I jumped in sooner, I would be wealthier sooner. So I just mentioned all that about, oh, well, you need to study, you need to do this and that. But there is that inflection point where at the end of the day, you've got to start doing. I actually didn't get my mentor until after I bought that 32 unit, which, if I had had the mentor beforehand, I'm sure they would have advised me on not doing certain things and doing certain things differently. But that's my university, essentially. I paid a lot of money for that 32 unit and I learned a lot of lessons along the way. But I encourage anybody that's listening to this, that's maybe right on the edge of making that next move, to just go ahead and make it, because you're going to make mistakes. That's just how it works. You're not going to be an entrepreneur and not make mistakes. So don't be afraid to make them. Jump in and just start doing.
I love it. There's an analogy that I absolutely love. I don't even play basketball, but it's a basketball analogy. And if you ever met me, like, I'm on the shorter side and it's not my sport. But if, let's say, I wanted to take up basketball, wouldn't you kind of laugh at me if you just saw me reading basketball books day after day after day and watching videos of other people taking shots and sort of like analyzing with charts, like how they're holding the ball.
It's funny to put it that way.
And then you're like, have you ever shot a ball yet? And, if I was to say to you, no, I want to get really good at like the theory of it and watch other people's journey and mistakes. And then eventually when I shoot a ball for the first time, I want it to be perfect and just swoosh right in. You'd laugh at me, right? Because a lot of things we do in life, it's, you take your shot and you're like, whoops, okay, adjust. And there's some practice involved. And it's like, you just have to go through the process. There's really no shortcut. There can be a procrastination cost. And a lot of people procrastinate via education. I
agree. And I think that, there are no shortcuts, but you can prevent a lot of mistakes by this whole mentorship thing that we've talked a little bit about. But at the end of the day, that's just a great analogy, I think, because you do have to go out there and start making those shots, getting those reps. And each time you do it, you're going to get a little bit better.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about having a cushion of additional funding for whatever your venture is. Maybe you're starting a cupcake shop, whatever it is. But you put together your business plan and you need X amount of money to make it happen according to your plan. But that's if everything goes according to plan. And having that extra cushion and having more funds available than you thought you needed is just great advice. I'm glad you brought that up. So we like to focus a lot on how do we stay sane, because everyone on my podcast is a successful entrepreneur that has accomplished a lot of things. And with those accomplishments come the demands of our work, and we really need to kind of focus. I know I do daily. This is a challenge for me that I have to work on constantly, is to not allow work to take over my entire life and my waking hours every day, and to make sure I set time aside for family, friends, fun, play, things that are important to me. What do you do to sort of keep yourself sane? Because I'm sure there's quite a few demands on your time day to day.
This part of the podcast is really speaking to me, because over the past year in particular, it's been the busiest of my life, because working as an air traffic controller full time is stressful enough in and of itself. And then building a multifamily apartment investing business is definitely very time consuming and requires travel and all those other things. And at the same time, my girlfriend that I love, I need to make sure I'm setting a time aside for her and for us. So that is a very difficult thing to do. And it's something that I've had to slowly get better at because I haven't quite quit the air traffic control job yet, right? And given myself that financial freedom where I can just spend time working remotely. I'm on the cusp. And today, as I'm working through these things, the best thing for me to be able to keep sane is to be present and shut everything down at a certain time because I just have to do that. I could be checking my email at all hours of the night and there's going to be new emails and new tasks will keep coming up for me to put on my to-do list. So what's really helped me is writing things down, being very intentional with my schedule and shutting it down at a certain time. Because I was really going crazy when I wasn't great at scheduling and writing things down. Because if you don't write down my to-do list for the day, then I'm sitting there trying to remember each task in my head and mark them off in my head, which has me continuously recycling those tasks in my head. You know what I mean? And then if I'm not putting things in my schedule and then having a certain shutdown time, then that's kind of having that same effect. So what I just do is I'll set a certain time nowadays, okay, at 5 or 6 p.m., it's all shut down, zero work after that. And then I'm going to go get out of the house, go do something with my girlfriend, go out to eat, go to the park, go to the beach, whatever. And I'm going to make sure that I'm present and not letting my mind wander and think about my business. And that's definitely harder to say or harder said than done. But I've definitely got a lot better at it as of recent. And that the other thing that really helps with that is me going out and, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, when you're reading my bio, is going backpacking, just literally unplugging and going into Yosemite and backpacking for 5 days is my ultimate reset.
That sounds like it would be, right? Because I'm pretty sure there's places there where you don't even get cell reception.
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing, pretty much.
And, as an air traffic controller, is there anything of that part of your work that carries over into what you do as an entrepreneur? Because I'm assuming that an air traffic controller is someone who has to stay very calm under pressure. And also your brain has to probably have a very good sorting ability, right? Like prioritizing and triaging and sort of keeping track of lots of different things. Do you find that there's any carryover or any kind of crossing over of the Venn diagram between the two worlds?
Yeah, I think that what you mentioned is really kind of a subconscious thing that can kind of carry over to. Really, most air traffic controllers are going to be your type A personality. And I think that ability to multitask and be under a lot of pressure really carries over into almost anything business related, in my opinion. It kind of just helps when you are dealing with pressure, I'm kind of callous to it is the best way I could put it. And my girlfriend will even kind of laugh at it because as things come up, something bad might be happening at the time. And it's just a little bit easier for me to brush it off my shoulder and kind of dodge it a little bit. So I think that really helps when it comes to business.
No, absolutely. And as an air traffic controller, you're saying you're hanging on to that job. You're still there. You're sort of doing two jobs really at the same time for now, but you eventually probably would leave kind of W-2 type employment and just be all in on your own business, entrepreneurship. So I know so many people who ask, when should I leave my job? Do I leave it when my new business idea is still at the, hey, I'm writing a business plan and don't even have a name for it yet stage? Do I quit my job then and go all in? Do I wait until I'm making X amount that is 30% of my normal take-home pay at my full-time job? Is that the right marker? And it's like people are waiting for this exact formula or even just to know what's best practices. And really, there is none, right? It's all over the board. Everybody chooses their own adventure. I know that I tend to advise people to hang on to their full-time job because normally it probably has benefits and gives them security, especially if they don't have a lot of savings, because I know how long it takes a lot of people to get their side hustle, their moonlighting, whatever it is, their freelancing, or even just their new business venture. Could be whatever, could be a coffee shop, a yoga studio, how long it takes for it to get profitable. A lot of people don't know that because they didn't get mentorship. They didn't go to a program like SCORE or find somebody in the exact industry that they want to get into. They can really tell them, hey, look, here's the runway. Okay, not to use airplane aviation terminology because you're an air traffic controller. You're like, runway actually means something to me. Don't mess with that word. But what is the runway for that particular business? They may actually need to hold on to their job for a while. So what do you tell people? Because you're kind of in the middle of having made that decision for yourself. And people probably ask you this in your sphere, in your world.
They do. And I actually get asked this often. And in particular, because my partner, Rich, recently hit the air traffic control job and is now solely focused on the real estate business. And so for that reason, people ask me often, and because I've talked about it so much, for me, it's really dynamic and it's going to be a difficult decision to make for myself. And so I tell people that ask me, if they're asking me for advice on that it's really just going to be revolving around time management and what your goals are. So for me, wealth creation and building generational wealth is something that I'm ultimately trying to achieve for me and my family. But when I think about it, I think, okay, so here, not too long from now, I'm going to equal or exceed my W-2 job's income with the real estate income. So some might say, okay, well, at that point, I would quit. Well, then I also have to grapple with the thought that if I don't quit, that's all of that money, that double income, I'm now using to reinvest in more real estate, which would then exponentially grow my portfolio, right? So I think for me, it's the date. There's not a set date. There's not a set dollar amount. It's going to be a time management issue. There's going to definitely be a point where working full time and also growing this business is not going to be feasible. And at that point, I'm going to quit the W-2 job and then focus on the real estate because that will be the best use of my time. So I anticipate that being sometime, honestly, within the next 12 months. But again, it's dynamic. If I'm completing everything that I need to get done and I'm staying sane, then I'll keep the job just so I can continue reinvesting that money. And I would just advise anybody that's grappling with that decision for themselves. Everybody's different, like you said. So just think about your time management, what your ultimate goals are, and what's best for you and your family.
Great advice. Great advice. I mean, it all boils down to that, right? I mean, no matter what the decision point is, not necessarily about when to take a leap from one job to just being just an entrepreneur, but also everything else we do. And then as far as resources that you use for your business or to help you grow your business, it could be time saver type hacks or resources like software, tools. Is there anything that you're loving right now that you want to share with us?
Sure. The first thing off the top of my head is Upwork. Upwork.com is probably my favorite website ever for doing business related things. If anybody's never heard of that, that is a freelancer website. So you can go onto that website and let's say for your business, you need to develop a pitch deck or a PowerPoint presentation to show to investors and you want it to look absolutely amazing, like a corporation made it, right? I don't have those skills. So I went on to Upwork and found somebody, looked up pitch deck and found somebody, and you can look all over the world. And I found somebody that was extremely talented with PowerPoint. I gave them the basics of what I needed and they made a presentation that blew my mind. The same thing with my website. To build a website, the same thing with editing my podcast and making it sound really professional. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I've found that saving myself time and having somebody that's better at me at any given task, I love going to that website because, my logo creation's another one. So that's one of my absolute favorites.
That's a great one. They should call themselves skillsidontthave.com or something, it's just great to be able to shop around for something. And there's someone that does it well. There's reviews, so you can kind of see what their history is with other clients, and it's great. So that's a good one. Anything else? The
only other one that's because I don't want to get too complicated with the real estate stuff, but something that just everyone can apply. This is going to sound silly, and somebody might laugh at this one, but it's something so simple that will save you in some cases, and that's just putting everything in the cloud. Everything in the cloud, all your documents. Anything you might need in the future, and you're not going to be at your computer or laptop. I love just to have everything in the cloud, and because then I can also access it on my phone really easily or whatever. But there's so many times, in my industry where I'm working with attorneys constantly, CPAs, lenders, the list goes on. And I've been caught a couple of times. I was like, oh crap, I don't have it. I'm not at my desktop or my laptop, but having it in the cloud now saves me. So I think that's like a no-brainer that everybody needs to do.
It's great. No, I'm a big believer in the paperless office, and I'm a lawyer. I'm a real estate agent. I mean, my industry is so document intense, but there's only really a few pieces of paper that you need to keep originals of, and all of them probably fit in one safe. You don't need rows and rows of what are those file cabinets anymore. I mean, really now we have virtual file cabinets, and it's the best way to stay organized. Nowadays, you can even have all of your documents. It's called OCR. It basically means text recognition. So they become searchable. So now if you're trying to find a document, you could actually look just for the word and it'll pull up all the documents in in your folder or wherever you're looking that have that word. I love scanning. So I think it's great to be able to scan something and save it rather than keeping that piece of paper, because paper piles up. And for people who are worried about theft online, I totally get that. But you could easily be, I don't want to scare anybody, but your house could be broken into, so that having it in your home you felt was so much more secure. It's not necessarily more secure. There's even fires and different things, and paper can become obsolete. It can become unreadable. So having it scanned and saved somewhere, like receipts, those actually, I don't know what kind of paper they print receipts on, but after a year, you can't even read them anymore. It's done on purpose. They're like, don't even try to return this after a year. We won't even let you read your receipt. It's going to disintegrate. Yeah. So I love that tip. Thank you for reminding all of us that we really need to step up our sort of document organization and archiving game. Well, I have absolutely loved talking to you. I would not only feel safe if you were in charge of routing the airplane I was on, which I absolutely have full confidence in your skills there, but you are an amazing real estate investor, and you've grown your portfolio in such an inspiring and motivating way that I know a lot of people would want to connect with you and follow you. What is the best way for people to do that?
The easiest way, go to pac3capital.com. That's PAC3capital.com. And you can reach out to me on there. There's a form you could fill out if you just want to, chat, or if you're interested in investing or anything like that. And you could also reach out to me straight to my email. That's Shawn, SHAWN, at pac3capital.com. And I'd be happy to connect.
Shawn, thank you so much for offering to connect with folks and be a resource, and keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job. I hope you actually stay an air traffic controller for a little longer so we can all feel a little bit safer, as we come in for our landing. I'm going to glance over to that control tower as I land in San Diego, and I'm going to wonder if that's you there waiting.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Shawn. We will connect soon. And thanks again for being a guest today.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness. But money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions, and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.